Okay, the Let Loose iPad event has just finished and I need to react to it. I've got a whole bunch of notes from the iPad event and it has honestly just finished, so everything I'm about to say is going to be very much a off-the-cuff reaction. If you can't be bothered to watch it yourself, or if you missed it, treat this as a condensed version of what I think matters. First thing to mention is this, the iPad mini. It was mentioned by Tim Cook, but in a kind of wrapping up, here's the iPads that we have available now type thing. I still think that's going to be later this year, but yeah, that's... sorry. But what we do have is 4 new iPads, 2 new iPad Airs and 2 new iPad Pros, and 2 new accessories and some software updates as well. So let's start with the iPad Air. I've always said that the iPad Air is an absolute triumph. Apple themselves said today that the iPad Air is designed to take features from the iPad Pro and basically make them available to more people, because the iPad Pro is expensive and this is far more affordable, which is why they put the M1 chip into it. The difference this time around with this particular update is that we're not just getting one iPad Air, we're getting 2. So we're getting the 11-inch, the familiar 11-inch size, but then they've added this great big 13-inch version as well. So once again, they're taking something from the iPad Pro, which is the great big display, and they're putting it into an iPad Air at a lower cost, which I'll come on to in a moment. Apparently, half of the iPad Pro users, so half of people basically who buy the iPad Pro, go for the big one. That's something else that they mentioned today. But bringing that cost down into the iPad Air and having that great big display, as Apple said, for more room to learn, work and play, is just, it's brilliant. It's such a good idea. And for both of these iPads, we get the front-facing camera in the proper position. So they've moved it from here to here. It also has landscape stereo speakers now with spatial audio and double the bass, whatever that means, and 4 finishes. So we get the familiar space grey and starlight, but there's a new purple and a new blue colour. But the other massive update to this, apart from that big screen, is the M2 chip. So they've put the M2 chip into the iPad Air, which isn't a surprise. That was a nailed on thing. I suppose they could have put the M3 in there, but that means 15% faster CPU performance, 25% faster GPU performance. It's basically overall 50% faster than the previous generation iPad Air with the M1 chip. The other thing that's very positive is the fact that the starting storage is now 128 gigabytes rather than 64, and there's 3 storage options in total, so you get 128, 512 and 1 terabyte. The camera is still 12 megapixel. I think it's the same camera system. If you've looked into this already and worked it out, let me know down below, but I think it's the same 12 megapixel camera, which is fine. It's got faster Wi-Fi and you can order it today. Price-wise in the UK, it's $599 for the 11-inch model and the 13-inch is $799, which it starts at $799, which for that size display, it's basically this iPad Pro. This is the M2 iPad Pro. This new 13-inch iPad Air is basically this tablet with a slightly worse camera system and a slightly worse display, but both of those things are still really good for a lot less money. 800 quid for a very, very good iPad. I'm impressed. And yes, I have ordered that big iPad Air to check out in purple, so if you don't want to miss that review, click that subscribe button. Before I get to the iPad Pro, just a very quick word from today's sponsor, which is Paperlike. And basically, guys, if you're going to buy a brand new iPad Air or an iPad Pro, you need one of these. And that's for 2 reasons. The first reason is that it protects that iPad screen. You don't want to damage that expensive display, and the great thing about Paperlike is that it protects it, and it does so somehow without dulling the colours. They still look very vibrant, which is a very tricky thing to do with screen protectors. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. The second reason is because, as the name suggests, it makes your iPad screen feel like paper, and it's uncanny. There's no way I can display this or show you how that works on a video like this. You have to experience it. It feels and sounds like paper. Writing on a glass display isn't particularly enjoyable. With this, It's so addictive. There is nothing like this. It's a perfect time to buy an iPad, obviously, and also a paper-like screen protector. And if I can fit it, trust me, you can. So do not worry about the application process. It's so straightforward. So to find out more about Paperlike, just click that link below. Okay, the iPad Pro. They introduced this with a really fascinating video where they basically took this massive crushing machine and crushed loads of stuff like paint pots and a grand piano and camera lenses, all sorts of stuff, into a pulp basically, and then it opened up again and there was nothing there apart from this brand new iPad Pro. And the first thing they showed before anything else was the side profile of it. And the reason for that is because it's the thinnest Apple product ever. In terms of numbers, that is 5.3mm for the 11-inch version and 5.1mm for the 13-inch version. And it comes in two colours, silver and space black, and it's made from 100% recycled aluminium, which is good news. The display is OLED. This is what we were expecting. For Apple, a single OLED panel was not enough. They had to develop two, so they've got this brand new thing they're calling, where's the name? Yeah, it's the Ultra Retina HDR display. It's got 1000 nits of full screen brightness for SDR and HDR content, and up to 1600 nits of peak HDR brightness. And to get that brightness, they needed to fuse together these two OLED panels, which is something called tandem OLED, apparently, which is game-changing in the industry, according to Apple. This is brand new stuff, and it's the only way they could get an OLED panel into the iPad Pro in a way that they were satisfied with, because there are other tablets out there with OLED panels, but finally we have it on the iPad Pro. Now, I've not seen this yet, so I can't comment on it, but I do have one on the way, so remember to subscribe and hit the bell not to miss that one. There's also another option, so if you need this, you can get a nano texture glass option, which has less glare and that sort of stuff. Onto performance, and this new iPad Pro has the M4 chip, not the M3 chip. We all knew that was going to happen, so that wasn't really a surprise. Bearing in mind, guys, this means that the iPad Pro now has technically a much a faster chip and the latest generation chip over the Mac. For me, for a Mac, addict, it's mind-blowing. The display technology seems to be one of the big drivers for this M4 chip. In terms of what we get from that chip, it's got 4 performance cores, 6 efficiency cores, and it's got up to 50% faster performance for the CPU compared to the M2. It's got a 10-core GPU, which for the first time on an iPad gives us mesh shading and ray tracing, and it's 4 times faster graphics-wise than the M2. Then obviously they had to compare it to a PC chip because that's one of Apple's favourite pastimes. And apparently the M4 can deliver the same performance as a PC chip, we don't know which one at the moment, using just a quarter of the power, which sounds very impressive. Then they talked about the neural engine, which is known as the NPU in the industry. It's got a brand new 16-core design. It's the most powerful neural engine that Apple has ever made. It can do 38 trillion operations per second, which is 60 times faster than the first neural engine in the A11 Bionic chip. They called it an outrageously powerful chip for AI, and they talked about what you can do with it in Final Cut Pro in terms of isolating subjects from the background. They didn't show us anything else about this, so they didn't show us anything new in iPad OS. I did wonder if they'd do that, but clearly and obviously, I suppose with hindsight, they're waiting for WWDC. With all this power, they've improved the thermal performance by 20%, and it's 4 times faster overall than the iPad Pro with the M2, and it's 10 times faster than the original iPad Pro, which I used to have. Did you have one of those? I'd love to know in the comments if you missed that. I love that old design. It's a bit of nostalgia there. But yeah, this new one is 10 times faster than the first one. They went on to talk about Pro apps, and in particular Final Cut Pro 2 and Logic Pro 2. Final Cut Pro 2 has 2 times faster rendering with this M4 chip. It has this very fancy live multicam thing where you can connect several iPads and iPhones to your iPad Pro and basically capture things in real time and go straight from that into the edit. That's very smart. The most important thing though is that you can now edit videos off an external drive, and they did reference the Thunderbolt speed for that on this new M4 iPad Pro. If you remember, this was a massive bugbear of mine for Final Cut Pro on the iPad. The fact that you couldn't edit videos off an external drive. You had to copy all of your stuff onto the iPad Pro and do it from there, which would just seem bonkers. You can do that now with this new iPad Pro, which I do wonder if that's down to the Thunderbolt speeds on this one. That I hadn't considered that. And Logic Pro 2 has a few interesting additions. Session players, which is this kind of AI-driven band that you can have. So you've got a drummer, a bass player, and a keyboard player, and they can basically do stuff for you just by you twiddling some knobs and stuff. New effects and a stem splitter, which was very clever. This is where you can take a single track of audio, and Logic Pro will split up the individual elements. So it'll take out the vocal, the drums, etc. Very smart, all AI driven, obviously. I do wonder if any of this stuff is going to come to the Mac. You know, will we get these features for Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro on the Mac? I guess though that we'll have to wait for the M4 versions of the Mac for that to happen. We're in a really weird place here. I don't think we've been here before. This feels incredibly strange. As for the cameras, I think it's the same camera system on the back. It's the 12 megapixel camera, which I don't think is any different. They do have a new adaptive flash, which means you can take photos of bits of paper that have shadows on them and it will get rid of the shadows for you. More interesting is the fact that the landscape camera, just like the iPad Air, has been moved to the side of the device. That's good news, along with the Face ID gubbins that has been moved as well. As for the pricing of the iPad Pro in the UK, the 11-inch version starts at $999 and the 13-inch version starts at $1,299, which I think is the same price as last time. And that brings us on to the accessories. We have a brand new Magic Keyboard, and what can we say about this? It's thinner, it's got a function row key, good news, it's got new color options, and it has a larger trackpad with responsive haptic feedback. That's pretty much it. It's 299 quid, which is a lot of money for a keyboard case, but that's always been the case, excuse the pun, with the Magic Keyboard. Then we got a brand new Apple Pencil, which is called the Apple Pencil Pro, great name. This has two features which are quite interesting. The first thing is the gyroscope, which means that when you twist the pencil, the tool on the screen twists as well. So if you've got a brush or something, it will twist it round. Great news, I'm sure, for artists. The other thing is the fact that you can now squeeze the Apple Pencil Pro, and that brings up new menus and tool palettes and that sort of stuff. Again, great news for artistic types. And yes, it works with the new iPad Air as well, and they've redesigned the charging, although it looks the same. Basically, they've had to do something so that the pencil can sit where the camera system is, because they've moved the camera to the landscape. So you know what I mean. Basically, they've made it work, which is, well, they had to. And the price of the Apple Pencil Pro in the UK is £129, which feels pretty good. Okay, it's over to you now, guys. I want to know what you think about the new iPad Air and the new iPad Pro. Will you buy one of these, or are you waiting for something that hasn't been updated for quite a while? Let me know down below. And remember, I am reviewing both the new iPad Air and the brand new iPad Pro very soon, so hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and if you've enjoyed this video, which feels completely bonkers and off the cuff, give me a cheeky thumbs up. It helps massively. I'll see you in the next one.